Hello there. I'd like to spend some time today to talk about a topic that's sort of near and dear to my heart, as something that in recent times I just like to talk about. The light bulb comes up for me, my eyes sort of shine. I'm very passionate when I'm talking about it. And I would like to kick the conversation on that topic off with some sort of riddle. And so, in my mind, I would say that when we think about sort of the components of a machine, the gears that need to work together with the software, hardware to deliver the functions of the complex machine, or the policies that need to work with infrastructure, other sort of components that need to be in place to make sure that it delivers on the intended outcome, or even our day to day relationships, or the departments in an organization that need to kind of interact in a certain way to deliver the core products and services that that organization delivers at the heart of it, or that drives the performance year on year, or just nature, the impact of rain, how that impacts flood, and that how that impacts the vegetation, impacts the food that animals are able to take on, and that in turn impacts on sort of availability of meat and a couple of other things like that. And in my mind, I would say, what do they all have in common? What they have in common is that each and every one of them is some sort of socio-technical system that is made up of parts that need to function together to drive a desired outcome or deliver a purpose, or kind of maybe by design or even unintentionally deliver some outcome as a result of them working together in one form or another. I'd like to talk to you today about systems thinking. I talk to people and I say that I am a passionate system thinker. And beyond just thinking systems, beyond the certifications and degrees that I have along those lines, it's such a topic that I find that has expression in so many aspects of life that I feel that everyone should be a system thinker in one capacity or the other. Yes, everyone's not going to be a professional in systems thinking, but our ability to embrace the implications of the interactions that our day-to-day decisions result in help us to better anticipate the outcomes that we see out of that. And so he saves us from the surprises of, I didn't see that coming, or that wasn't supposed to happen. Half the time, if we were a bit intentional and holistic in our approach, we could envisage potential scenarios that sometimes tend to sound like they catch us by surprise. If it's that important, why is everyone not kind of looking at systems thinking? One of the reasons that I like to think about is the fact that the knock-on effect of some of these interactions tend to have a delayed impact. And so sometimes it's hard for people to see that result in the instance. And so typically it's not uncommon to hear that when systems or parts interact within the system, it's not uncommon for things to get better first before they get worse. And so that immediate gratification of a decision made kind of justifies the short-term focus on the next step and sometimes makes you forget the broader outcomes, and then only to be surprised down the line by something that was good that then turned out not to be so great after all. One popular example, that was used was of a policy around the Cobra head effect. If you do have the time, I would recommend that you read up on that. That I've always found very mind-blowing. And so it would explain some of this concepts, in a bit more detail. Now, if we go to the kind of topic of systems thinking, I felt that it was very important that I help people understand what are systems, what's a system, why would you call anything a system? The first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is, the computer systems. There's just so many engineered, technical sounding things that people just glaze over when they think about systems thinking. But I'm really passionate about making this very practical because day to day, I see interactions that drive outcomes in relationships, in not fully thought out, maybe policies. It could just be design. It could be one thing or the other. And so, what is a system? A system consists of parts that are working together to deliver an outcome. They would really only be called a system if their actions need to come together to deliver some function, purpose, or their interaction drives the performance of this whole entity that we're calling a system. And so that's why I say that it's applicable to socio-technical systems, policies, relationships, day-to-day technical things, and even the things that we don't pay attention to, the ecosystem, nature, and the knock-on effect of certain decisions in one part of the globe that turns out to impact another part of the globe, and you're wondering, why is this happening? Now, because of advancement in technology and just the need to better connect things together, we continue to engineer this bigger system where the implications of decisions in a very similarly small sphere has knock-on effects on other places. And so if in doubt, think about a software update that we've all been talking about in recent time that pretty much almost shut down the whole world because it interacted with another software and there was some issue that just somehow resulted in airlines, hospitals, emergency systems all kind of impacted in one form or another. Some people are still reeling from the effect of those knock-on effects of the direct impact that first happened. So this is something you should stop and pay attention to. If you're somebody who's intentional about thinking about longer term effects of the things that you do, then you should be a system thinker. You should surround yourself with system thinkers. So bottom line is, a system is often said to be the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. Your basic everyday system in front of you is the human being. Like, your brain needs to be working with your legs and my mouth needs to be working. Everything needs to coordinate effectively such that the human being, Funmilola Asa, shows up in the way that I'm coherent and consistent and I can talk to you because all the signals are firing correctly. Another example that's often used is your car. You can have the best tires in the world. If it does not fit very well with other parts of your car, then that car isn't going anywhere. If anything, that best tire could result in an accident because it's not working effectively with the rest of the vehicle. So I guess my point is made around what a system is. It's pause. Just think about the interactions around you and you start to see the systems evolve that you haven't quite paid attention to in the past. So what is systems thinking? So just knowing that a system exists or your ability to recognize the system draws very strongly on your system thinking ability. So I like to say that is a structured big picture thinking. It's structured because often we think about the big picture, but if you're still blindsided to key parts of the things that are driving your outcomes, then it's still not systems thinking. You haven't thought about all your stakeholders, your interactions, your second order effects, the knock-on effect of this happening and that happening. Have you ever heard of, oh, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, let's face this now? Often when we get to those bridges, we're not able to cross them because we weren't prepared to cross the bridges at that time because there was something you were supposed to have handy 5 years ago to get to the bridge that you were going to cross. Very basic, very simple, but hopefully you're able to expand that to some of the scenarios and instances that resonate with whatever sphere that this makes sense for you. Now, if I think about that, it's an approach that focuses on the interactions within a system. A lot of us are very good at optimizing pockets of our systems. We make the tires, oh, let me get the best tires, like I said in the car example. Oh, let me rev up the engine. But if you don't look at the whole vehicle, those efforts may become suboptimal. So your ability to be able to think about the interactions that are driving the behavior of the system over time. beyond this first reaction? What could happen as a result of this first interaction that could be a surprise that we haven't anticipated for? And because you have now thought about it, as you make your plans on day one, you're thinking about day 5, you're thinking about year 2, you're thinking about year 3. That's what it's called when we think about the system behavior over time. Now, it helps you to think about complex systems in a way that you can simplify it. And yet, so you know how when you think in analogies, it helps you with that because you can break up even the most complex systems into the key components, but watching out for the interactions. Because things tend to be very complex, we want to focus on an entity before we move to the next one. Now, with system thinking, you still get to do that, but you do that thinking about the strings that tie this one decision to the next decision. And so you're being holistic in your approach to it. So in my mind, probably oversimplified, and some people who are like really technical experts of system thinking are like, for me, what are you doing explaining systems thinking in such basic terms? But at the heart of it, that really is it. Now, there are frameworks, there's so many things that can be applied depending on the complexity of what you're dealing with. But at the heart of it, it's being able to analyze a system by looking at the interactions between the part, looking at the outcomes of the system, and making sure that whatever analysis you do always bears in mind the interactions that are driving the outcome of that system. Whether it's in your business, whether it's in the policies, whether you're thinking about, who are the other stakeholders, who needs to know something ahead of time, just so that they can be prepared to cross the bridge when we get there because we need them to be ready at that time. It's not a surprise for them. That's part of how you think about the strings that tie your outcomes together. Now, as I kind of take this a bit, in the next couple of minutes, I'll just share a few principles that help you think about your system in kind of fundamentals of system thinking in my mind. One of that is that, again, re-emphasizing that the interactions are very, very important in a system. How would you know that you're thinking systemically? You're going beyond just each component of your bigger entity to think about how do they interact, how do those interactions drive the outcomes of the system, and what do I need to do to monitor and be able to improve those interactions so that I am not blindsided to the outcomes of these interactions of the entities in the system. So, for instance, when I think about a business that's got, the R&D department, they've got the sales department, they've got like your core day-to-day, business management, operations management of the system. An example that's often used is like, a beer manufacturing system. And the fact that you can do the best work with sales and you keep taking the orders and get the best queue of things that you're delivering for the customers. If you're not in tune with how the R&D department works, and they're not able to churn out those answers to meet the promises that you've made, or worse still, your assembly line is unable to generate the outputs to match the high demand. While it may look good on the books in the beginning that you have such great demand, your inability to fulfill those demands are going to result in a very angry and frustrated customer, where even if you had five units that were ordered in year 1 before you seemingly improved, you can go down to 0 because now not only are you're going to ground zero, you're going to a negative level because you haven't accounted for all the things that need to come together for you to deliver these outcomes that you have promised the customer. So you must always think about the interactions. Who and who needs to work together? Who do I need to be talking to? Who do I need to account for in this policy? As I think about this policy as a nation, as a body, who else's opinion do I need here to realize that what is best for this unit, this country, this section, this city is maybe not the best optimal decision, but I only know that because I'm now accounting for all the limitations and the interactions of the others who are impacted by this decision. Hopefully that helps break it down. Now, A few key principles to bear in mind as I sort of start to wrap this up. Number one is that the performance of the system depends on how the parts fit, not just how they act independently. Classic example is the vehicle, the car. You can the I listened to some documentary from the past talking on the topic of system thinking, and the example there was if you looked for a car that had the best tires, and then you thought about, oh, which car has the best engine, and then you took each one of those decisions independently, and then you got the best of every one of those things and put them together and thinking that you're going to get the best car. Chances are that you don't have a car at all because those parts don't fit together and that car isn't going anywhere. And so it's not uncommon to see teams that have the smartest people and somehow they're never able to deliver outcomes because they are all very good but optimized for their individual silos, so much so that they cannot interact together enough to deliver the outcomes that that team needs to deliver. So, fundamental principle, the performance of a system depends on how the parts fit together. How well are we focused on the interactions and the connections, in addition to how well each part works? A second one is just thinking about the iceberg model. It's a key tool that's used by system thinkers. It's the fact that the things that you see on the surface of the iceberg is sitting on this big entity that is buried under the water. You know, we use iceberg principle for so many other analogies, but in the systems thinking world, the iceberg represents the fact that the events that you see is driven by the patterns that exist. And so most times they're not isolated. It's like when you're like playing the whack-a-mole, something shows up here, it shows up there, it shows up somewhere there. There's probably some pattern to it. And those patterns are driven by the underlying systems that exist, how things are already working together, the loopholes that exist in your existing structure, in your existing policy, and in the way that you have set up the infrastructure to enable whatever it is you're saying. And so those patterns stem from the underlying structures that are there. So think about, again, governmental policies, think about your business, think about the relationships. If you all don't talk together on a regular basis, well, it's not surprising that you would miss critical signals. And so the structures that you have in place does not facilitate a conversation to the point where you're able to catch the patterns that then result in this event that everybody is trying to fight fires to solve. And so if you find yourself constantly always trying to fight fires and solving things that are popping up in multiple places, ask yourself what patterns are there that we can use to anticipate the next place this is going to show up. And then maybe the more powerful effort is to say, what is the structure that we have designed that's causing these patterns to exist? Is it seasonal? Does it occur when certain things happen? Why is this happening? Is there shortages in places that we should be accounting for? And then the most powerful one is the mindset, the mental models that sustain these systems, the things that people say, this can never be done. This is how we do it here. And so no matter the innovation you bring, you find that, okay, from time to time, things just fall flat. You try to improve a certain policy and they're like, no, this doesn't work here. So as a system thinker, you want to explore and say, why are these structures working this way? What are the things that are sustaining it? What are those mental models that we need to change and transform in a way that the systems can then build on it, and then we can anticipate the patterns and design out some of the surprises that we see. So events are a subset of the patterns that are created by the interactions within your system structure, and these things are sustained by the mental models. And so your ability to really deliver outcomes or significant impact is first in transforming the mental models that, and then redesigning some of the structures that are causing the challenges that you see. And then maybe if that is really hard, in the interim, You should get better at anticipating where this will come from, because now you're seeing where the connections are happening. And so you can see that, yeah, there's a pattern to this. And most likely our next problem is going to show up in this place or at this time because of this cycle of events that are rubbing off of one another. Another principle to think about is the fact that your system performance is influenced by the incentives that you put in place. And so when you see things going a certain way, your incentives can be, just for example, maybe your kids, they get rewarded when they say the things that you want them to say. And so they are more invested, not in doing the right things, but telling you the things that you want to hear as an example of things going well. And so the question is, when you think about even your policies, your equipment, the example that really excited me when I heard it was of somebody who was trying to design a robot to kind of move around the house and do some cleaning. And the way they designed it was to make it punitive. Whenever the robot bumped into a structure, there was like a punitive incentive to say that is bad, that's a flag, so you shouldn't bump into a wall. After a while, they noticed that the robot started driving backwards. So rather than getting to a wall and bending away from the wall, they'll be reversing because they're so afraid of getting to the wall, because it's considered a very bad thing. But what you did really was to say, you shouldn't bump into the wall, take a detour when you get into the wall. Now, what does this mean for your business, your policy, your relationships, or whatever system that you're looking at? The question is, what behaviors do your incentives inspire for your system? Because you would see that result over time. And so if you're seeing certain things in your system or some interactions that you don't like, the question is, what are the incentives that are there? What are the things that drives the behavior? What are the things that people are interpreting as this is correct? Those have implications for what you see in your system. Lastly, is your ability to track things from a holistic perspective. It saves you from blind spots. Often, we're focused on tracking the final result. Sales is great, and so as a result, the company is doing well. It's doing well until it's not doing well, because somehow we haven't been able to monitor the other things that drive sales. Again, with the bear manufacturing example that is often used, in the systems dynamics, class. But that's a typical example of you not focusing on the things that enable the outcomes that you're looking for. And so, question for you is, if you're really a system thinker, is how well are you monitoring those things that are considered the leading indicators of the final outcomes of that system? Again, I always want to say, when I give this principles, to think about them in light of any of those interactions around you that drive outcomes. Social technical systems, this apply to people relationship, organizations, formal or informal organizational settings, states, nationals, interactions between, just equipment, people, nature. Make sure that you really do think about this in that light. And so I always say to folks that a right variable, so a right formula that is applied to the wrong variable will give you incorrect outcomes. And so it's important that you're able to really think about this, reflect on it, and be sure that before you discount the fact that whether or not system thinking is important for you, that you've really, really thought about those things in your sphere that sound like a system. Again, a system is a bigger whole that is impacted by the interactions of its subparts. What's your whole? What whole are you going to be applying systems thinking to today? Let me know in the comments, and I'm happy to connect and share your thoughts and insights on the systems around you. My name again is Funmilola Asa. I'm a system thinker. And I love to talk about systems thinking, and I'll look for other ways to break this down even better so that we can all continue to be system thinkers, because the world needs more and more system thinkers. In a world that continues to be interconnected, interrelated, more and increasingly so, we need people who are thinking about the entities and the interactions that drive outcomes. I hope this has been helpful to you. Um, if you require just more clarification, happy to chat about systems. My eyes come alive when I think about interactions and the outcomes that they drive. Talk to you soon in another series on system thinking, practical system thinking applied. Have a good day.